Hello again. I am back. Let's pretend we are now on Thursday. Happy Thursday, everybody. Yes, I have not changed my outfit since Wednesday. Nobody judge. All right, we are now in our last. Oh, no, it's Friday. Today's Friday. Oh, I'm getting so confused. Okay, happy Friday, everyone. We are now on day 4 of Borders, brought to you again by Miss DS. Here I am. Great news. My day 3 recorded, so that was very exciting. I'm going to go into full screen mode so you can see a little bit better. As I'm doing that, you might want to have your Borders learning log ready to go, as the do now today is a video. So what I recommend that you do is stop the recording as if you would stop the video. So let me go into full screen mode. If you hear noises in the background, I have somebody doing some work on my apartment. So here we have the video for today. You already know the answer to question 1. How are the 2 regions of Germany divided and who control each part? So you can go ahead and fill that out before the video even starts. But what I really want you to focus on today are questions 2, 3, and 4. Today we're looking at the impact, the effects of the Berlin Wall, both while the wall was in place, as well as what happened when the wall came down in November of 1989. So what I want you to look at for number 2 is what happened after the wall was built. One of the examples they give that was that the streets were divided. So I would like you to look at other impacts besides that the streets were divided. I want you to look at what would happen if you tried to escape. The video goes through a few of those. And then also I want you to be thinking about what is the symbolism of the wall. So enjoy the video.
After the Second World War, this city became the front line for a different kind of war, the Cold War. For nearly 40 years, Europe was divided between the democracies of the West and the communist states of the East, and Berlin was where the two sides met. When Nazi Germany was defeated in 1945, Berlin was divided up into 4 parts by the Allied powers and the Soviet Union. As post-war Germany started to rebuild, 2 countries were formed from the rubble: a free market and democratic West Germany and a communist-controlled East Germany under the influence of Russia. Despite growing tensions between West and East Berlin, Berliners were able to move between the 2 halves of the city to go to work, school, or visit family and friends, until one night in August 1961. Overnight, East German soldiers sealed off the border between the 2 halves of the city.
I watched workmen supervised by troops putting the finishing touches to the cement curtain through which no East German can pass.
The first and main shock we had was 61, when they built a wall right through a city. It was not an ordinary wall around a city to protect it from enemies, but it was a prison wall through a city. And we didn't believe this. We thought there is a responsibility of all the 4 allies, and they will hold this city together. But nobody did anything.
Boyfriends and girlfriends, parents and children, whole families suddenly found themselves on opposite sides of the wall. Even streets became divided.
The wall divided the street. So, for example, a young man and a young girl who loved each other couldn't see each other anymore when the wall was built, because the wall was built exactly at the street. And neighbors, families, they could see each other, but they couldn't go to each other because the wall divided the street. And I think this is a symbol for divided Berlin, for divided Europe, and for divided world at that time.
Houses along the border were bricked up. People made desperate bids to escape across the border into the West. Some even died trying. Teenager Peter Fechter was the first to lose his life, shot by border guards.
We saw Peter Fechter bleeding, and nobody helped him. He was right in front of the American soldiers. Nobody helped him. It was on the other side of the world. And it was a question of war and Cold War. Not peace, but Cold War was better than war.
Over the next few years, the authorities strengthened the barriers and it became known as the Berlin Wall.
You can see the first barrier where after the graveyard. After this, there was electric fence, but if you touched it, you had no idea what happened if you are somebody who wants to flee. But the soldiers in the watchtower, they got a signal that there is somebody. And then comes the inner wall, which was not so high. And behind this inner wall, there was something like on the floor with needles on it. So if you jumped over the inner wall, you landed in needles, 10 centimeter high needles. Then the original death strip with bunkers and soldiers, they got permittance from the system, from the government to shoot to everybody who is near there.
As the Berlin Wall became harder to cross, people came up with more and more ambitious ideas to help friends and families escape from East Berlin.
So the video gave you a few examples there. Go ahead and do your best to answer them now. Just take a moment to do that. Okay, great. So let's move on. Today's objective is I will be able to analyze the social, economic, and political impact of the Berlin Wall on the people of East and West Berlin. So as we go through this, I'm going to show you the perspectives of the East and West Berliners while the wall was up and after the wall came down. The first one I'm going to start with is the political impact while the wall was up. So here we have the political impact on East Berliners. So while it was up, the East Berliners were told that the wall was to keep fascism out on the other side. Everything bad in the world, all that terrible Western ideology, behavior, ideas, that's what the wall was keeping out. We don't want any of that influence on our side. And there was a lot of propaganda that promoted the evils of capitalism and democracy. They lived under a totalitarian government. As we remember from our unit in the fall, totalitarian government means limited rights and freedoms. And of course, living in this state or this fear all the time because you could be arrested for small infractions. I'm going to pause the video for a second as there is a bit of noise in the background. Oh, I'm back. I didn't even mean to do that. Okay. So, as I was just saying, they lived in this culture of fear, right? Many lived in constant fear. There were informants that were telling on each other. Neighbors were telling on neighbors in exchange for possessions or for increased power. Oh, there goes the noise again. So I'm going to. Okay, I'm back. Hopefully, it'll be a little quieter now. So, as I just explained, the political impact of the East Berliners was that they were living under this totalitarian government, and again, living in this culture of paranoia. If you could see here, this is the building known as the Stasi. This was the East Berlin secret police headquarters that was actually in existence until 1990. So, even after the wall fell in 1989, this headquarters remained standing. All right, I'm going to go into big present mode. We're going to go through, we went through this slide, so now we're going to go on to the next one. So the wall came down on November 9th, 1989. And initially, people were very excited to live in a more free and fair country, right? Everything that they had hoped for was now coming true. However, as time went on, there are anecdotes about people missing their old way of life. They had become accustomed to the rules and regulations under a totalitarian society, and the shift was initially kind of hard. Also, as I'm going to explain on the next slide, they saw some of the ills of capitalism, right? The rich getting richer, the wealth gap increasing, and they might have started to believe in this communist propaganda. Now, remember, once you live a certain way for a long period of time, you start to get used to that, and a shift can be hard. So, what about the economic impact? Excuse me. While the wall was up, if they had jobs that were located in West Berlin, they ended up losing those because they could no longer cross over. Additionally, technological advancement and innovation were slow. They didn't have the up to date, more new, trendy products that the West had, so therefore they lagged behind. In terms of overall GDP, or the amount of money the country is able to produce, the gross domestic product, East Berlin only accounted for 8% of Germany's overall GDP. And after the walls came down, it was noted that unemployment was significantly higher in the East than it was in the West. Additionally, this was a new job market that the East Berliners were not prepared for. It was competitive because now they were competing with people from West Berlin and East Berlin, and they struggled to find the jobs. They didn't have the skill sets necessary to work in these new jobs in these new factories because that's not what life was like over in East Berlin. Additionally, from the factory or the business perspective, they also struggled because the rules and regulations under a communist and under a capitalist society are quite different. Remember, in a capitalist society, there is something known as laissez-faire, where the government is not allowed to get involved in the dealings of a business. So this also contributed to East Berliners missing their old way of life. If we take a look at this slide, we can look at what Germany looks like today. This is actually from like 2017. From here, this is in British, excuse me, this is in pounds, in the euro pound, not the pound, sorry, in the euro, which is the currency for most of Europe. We can see here that Western Europe, it's about $4,100 USD, and here's about $3,300 USD. So even today, people in Western Germany are still making more than those in Eastern Germany. Same thing for GDP and for unemployment. As you can see, the unemployment, even today, 30 some odd years later, it is still higher in East Germany than it is in West Germany. So the impact is profound and it lasts a long time. So, what I would like you to do right now is to stop and kind of reflect on what you just heard about the political and economic impacts. So, like I said, spoiler alert, the wall will eventually come down on November 9th, 1989. And East Berliners, for the first time, will see what life was like on the other side. So, I want you to imagine you are an East Berliner and respond to the questions below. You see all these new cars, the fancy buildings, the clean streets. What are your first thoughts? Right? You're not necessarily immediately jealous. Remember what I said, people are accustomed to a certain way of life. So keep in mind, you've been under a totalitarian state that perpetuated, that really pushed out these ideas of an anti-capitalist propaganda for many years. Are you confused? Are you shocked? Are you angry? Talk to me. What are your state of mind and emotions? So take a few minutes to pause the video and to answer this on your Berlin learning log. Okay, now that you've done that, I want to look at what I think to be is the most interesting part, which is the social impact. And one of the biggest impact a border can have is on our day-to-day lives. You can see from this picture here, I really thought this was beautiful symbolism of two people that are being separated because of this wall. The West Berliners called this the wall of shame. And people were separated from their family members, from their friends, from their lovers, from their colleagues. And I think, so before I go on, I laugh at the term wall of shame because it reminds me of when I put up my board of shame when the students don't turn in their work on time. But on a more serious note, as I was writing this and as I'm teaching it now, I think about this idea of being separated based on borders, either real, imagined, or in our case, virtual. Right? It's interesting. You see, I saw my colleagues one day and I didn't the next. Same with family members and same with friends. And I can't help but think that the way life is right now feels like a different type of border. And this shelter in place has put up a border around ours and around our lives and has drastically shifted how we go about our day to day. So again, it's not a physical border, but it's certainly one that I feel connects to the Berlin Wall in a way, especially because the Berlin Wall went up overnight. Similarly, the shelter in place also happened overnight. So many tried to escape. And there's actually stories of West Berliners smuggling out their fellow students and organizing so they get passports in West Berlin so they could stay in West Berlin. So the video talked about this a little bit, but there are about 5,000 people that were successful in crossing over the wall. 136 died trying. You heard about one of them in the video. Most people were shot and killed if they were seen. Now, this number 136 is, not necessarily verified. The number could potentially be a lot higher, but that's all that's been, quote unquote, confirmed. What's interesting is that anytime somebody would try to escape, the East Berliners would do everything in their power to try to stop them from doing it again. So if they tried to climb the wall, maybe they would put glass up there. If they tried to go under a tunnel, they would make sure they were blocking any access to the tunnel in the future. So like I said, they could dig tunnels. There's some stories of people using hot air balloons to go over the border. They would try to climb over. They would use small submarines and trunks of cars. Pretty crazy. Where there's a will, there's a way. Something else that I thought was interesting was this idea of social impact for people of color. So like I said, the wall came down on November 9th, 1989. And initially it was this like time of excitement and fervor, and the different sides were reuniting, and there was this strong sense of patriotism, like we will come together, we will be one as Germany. But unfortunately, for many people, these patriotic feelings, these ideas of one Germany, was short-lived, and it was replaced with racism and the rise of Nazi-like ideologies. These Nazi-like ideologies being homogeneity, where everybody is the same, and in this case, everybody white and German, and superiority. And these would come from aggressive youth groups. Unfortunately, today, both in the United States and in Germany, there are these far right groups that still promote these ideologies. The information I'm giving you comes from a website called Al Jazeera, where they interviewed a variety of different people who lived in Berlin after the wall fell down. They spoke about race riots. They spoke about how their mental health just started to decline because the racism that they experienced started to weigh on them for years and years and years. And at one point, one young man spoke about how he started to internalize the racism so much that he would laugh at himself. Another woman spoke about how she felt like her pain was invisible in her own society. A Vietnamese woman who spoke with Al Jazeera spoke about how her parents weren't able to get the same workers' rights as German citizens, how she was beaten up in school. One woman who came from Ecuador said, "People would often stop me and say, 'Why don't you wash yourself? Look at your skin. It's so filthy.' Sometimes they would throw stones or rubbish at me. It was very violent." Right? A lot of these people ended up returning to their home countries because the racism was so bad. And what's interesting is the people that came from Vietnam were often escaping the Vietnam War. This Ecuadorian woman that I was just speaking about, she was a mother of two, and she only spent 5 years in Berlin and returned to Ecuador after that. So not all positive as the wall came down. So what I would like you to do right now is something a little different. Instead of me asking you a question, I have given you a bit.ly. I have it here, but it's also linked on the Learning Log. It's from CNN, and it looks at the pictures of the wall from before it was built all the way to what it looks like today. I strongly encourage you to look through all of them before answering the questions because they're super cool. And I really want you to get a chance to see about what the wall looked like as it was coming down. I think that to me is the most interesting. So please take a moment to stop the screencast and look at this website. Cool. Hope you guys all liked the pictures. I'm excited to see which ones you thought were the most interesting and what changes you saw and the emotions associated with it. So the last objective for today is objective number 2, which is I'll be able to analyze and explain what the symbolism of the Berlin Wall was. So what was that symbolism? So as we can see here, if we just take a look at this picture, we have this wall here, right? And this wall is supposed to symbolize the Berlin Wall. And as we can see, it says no admittance. And it says by order, Joe. And initially, I would think that was probably Joseph Stalin, but he was dead by the time that the wall came up. But he did have something in mind known as the Iron Curtain. The Iron Curtain was what was going to separate Eastern Europe from Western Europe. So you can see here that somebody is peeking under the wall here to see what life is like on the other side. And we see that this side is the Soviet side, right? We can see by the Soviet flag, and you can see people here that are escaping, right? To the other side, somebody's kind of curious and looking around. So the symbolism of the wall is such that it's an ideological divide. It's a divide between two sets of ideologies, like I spoke about yesterday, between Western democracy and Western capitalism versus the Eastern dictatorship and communism. It's also a social divide between those who have freedom and those who do not. And as time went on, the wall in unto itself became a symbol of the Cold War. It became a symbol of these deep divisions, the distrust, and the animosity that existed between the two sides. So what happened when the Berlin Wall fell? There's two more video clips. For this video clip, you do not need to take notes. Just watch how excited and joyous people are at the fall of the wall. And then in your own, kind of think about what this wall might symbolize, what the fall of the wall might symbolize. And if you are not quite sure, you can go back to the slide before, rewind a little to see what I said the wall symbolizes. Oops, sorry. I have to push play. And I have to turn the volume up, so we're going to try this again. Okay, let me pause it just for 1 second. Okay, let's try this again. Thank you for bearing with me with the technology. I appreciate it. It is loading. We are starting now. So sorry if that was a little quiet. Hopefully you can make it a little louder on your computer, but you can see the joyousness, the excitement, what it meant to really tear down the pieces of that wall. So for this one, you're going to watch the video that's linked in your learning log and answer the questions there. I thought it would be easier. The video is a little longer. It's a little bit more complicated. So you can go on and take a look at the video there and answer the questions on the learning log. Last thing before I go for this week, I want to show you pictures of the Berlin Wall today. I was fortunate enough to go see the Berlin Wall 3 summers ago, and I thought the murals that have now been painted on it are really beautiful. And you could take a few minutes to kind of look at these on your own and look at the different symbolism that each one includes. This one I think is really pretty because of the dove, but also sort of the contrast with the chain. This one says, dancing to freedom, no more wars, no more walls. Say no to terror and repression towards all living beings. This one was really beautiful too. Just kind of different cool designs of people. And I love this one. Also, you can see Nelson Mandela's here and Ray Charles. This one with peace, and this is the Brandenburg Gate, which is located in West Berlin, also showing a sign of peace, the two doves holding it up. This one I thought was interesting. This is Nikita Khrushchev and Richard Nixon kissing. And Richard Nixon was one of the presidents during the Cold War as well. This one is interesting. This is the Star of David for Judaism on top of the German flag. And there's me, summer of 2017, very happy and excited. And I remember going up to the people saying, please take a picture of me so I could show my students. So there I am at the Berlin Wall a couple of years ago. All right, guys. Once again, don't forget, if you have any questions, please add them to the document. And last thing, please submit the Google Doc, the Berlin Learning Log with your responses to the activities and any questions you have for me or for Ms. Pearson by Friday night at 11:59. Thanks for bearing with all the technological stuff. I hope it's okay. Talk to you guys soon. Miss you.